Hello and welcome fellow motorsports fans. My name is Marcel and it is once again time to talk about a weekend packed with feeder series racing, and this time we actually have the conclusion of 3 different championships to talk about, including a particularly interesting narrative of Taponen now being equal to Antonelli, which has been brought up on the broadcast quite a bit, and I do feel the need to discuss this a little. But as always, we will start with the slower formulas first, so let's not waste any more time. We begin with the only not quite championship deciding round, the second round of the Formula Winter Series. And before we get to any of the actual racing, a quick shout out to Rivera, who I unfortunately missed last week while talking about the best performing rookies, although he was the second best rookie by a long shot last week. So shout out now, although unfortunately he was very anonymous this week, so there wouldn't have been a reason to bring him up otherwise. Very, very sad in this regard. The frontrunners do continue to be Cardenas and Peebles, with also rookie Gladish in the mix, although a crucial DNF did cost him points and now has thrown him off a tiny bit from the championship fight. Cardenas and Peebles are only 5 points apart now at the halfway point, so they will probably continue to have an intense title fight until the very end. Once again, the critical point of this series for me remains, first of all, the rookies. So we have Maxime Rehm performing quite well this time around, which was really nice to see. Then we have a newcomer who he didn't do the first round with Nathan Tighe. I believe he's called Nathan Tighe anyway, a British karting graduate, who he's been really good in the karts and he has stepped up quite well, immediately fighting for points from the get-go. That was really nice to see. Unfortunately, once again, when there are winners in the rookie camp, they have to be losers. And I do have to say, once again, René Lammers, still not quite where we do expect him to be as the season continues. I just want to, stay on my Lammers watch, as I am very, very hopeful about this guy's future performance, but he has not really risen to that level of expectations just yet. Kolnagi is the other rookie who just continues to deliver and keeps scrapping for points. That is also really nice to see. But there's also some spectacular performances from the second year guys, and one that I do need to bring up is the Decker, who has been like an also ran in the British for F4 last year, has not really been impressive, although I might add there is a massive car caveat in this discussion. But nonetheless, he has overperformed expectations quite a bit this week by actually getting a podium in race 3, I want to say. So that was really nice to see. Similar fashion, we finally had a maiden victory for third in the championship, Ferrara, who has been, one of the better but not great guys in the Italian F4 last year, if that makes sense. So once again, really nice to see him step up, and this actually more or less brings him into the championship fight if he can keep up this performance. So certainly another guy to keep an eye on. I do have to say, Mikkel Garde Pedersen, a reigning Danish F4 champion, he's been good with the recovery drives. Last week we've talked about it, but this time he's gone missing entirely, and had I not known that he's on the entry list, I would have just not seen him at all. So very bizarre. I don't really know what happened, but I do expect him to bounce back. Finally, and this is crucial about this series, it's the driving standards. Not just in the races, but yes, they have also been abysmal. Some of these races have been way more safety car than actual racing. I don't remember which of the 3, but there was one that literally, I don't think had any green laps, so that was really rough to watch all around. But we had an even more curious scenario with the first qualifying session actually not producing a single legal lap time. I don't really know how that can happen. Obviously track limits is the big factor here, but still that's so just absurd from a grid this size as well. It's 38 cars participated in that quali session and not a single one set a legal time, so they had to go back to using practice lap times to set the grid. Just really mental, and definitely something that I couldn't leave out from this weekend. Now let's move on to the first title decider in the UAE. The F4 UAE concluded its 5-round season at the glorious Dubai Autodrome, and it has been quite the finale really, with Freddie Slater going up against Nakamura-Berta and Keanu Al-Azhari for a last battle across 3 races. Unfortunately, Al-Azhari not quite as big a part in this battle as we would have maybe expected him to be, just because the Prema dominance this week has been quite massive. I want to say, like all the Prema run entries were just quite a bit quicker than what Yassid or Excel or whatever who's running Keanu's car could really bring to the battle this time out. So unfortunately he was pretty quickly more or less out of the running. He still had some good performances, in particular that last race. He was really fighting until the very end, but it just wasn't quite meant to be. On the other hand, the more interesting protagonists in this were Nakamura-Berta and Freddie Slater, because Nakamura-Berta did get the ideal start he needed for this by winning the first race in pretty dominant fashion, and yeah, therefore set himself up to actually fight for this title. And they were fighting until more or less the very last lap, with Nakamura-Berta running in second in the last race, just ahead of Freddie Slater, but chasing Rashid Al-Daheri, and essentially he would have had to pass Al-Daheri for the win to win the season. He didn't quite manage it in the given time frame, so Slater actually takes the win with, I'd say, consistency this weekend at least. He didn't get a win or a P2, but he just kept scoring very, very good points. And to be honest, that's more or less what he has been doing throughout the season, except last round, or he would have secured this title quite a bit earlier, if you ask me. The one thing that's really interesting about this is that just from a pure like raw pace perspective, I suppose, Nakamura-Berta was actually the more impressive driver, I might say, especially towards the end. But in general, he's had more of these dominant runs. Yes, the lows were lower than what Slater had, but yeah, as I said, just the peak performance was really impressive, and he also has less experience in the car, so that's a thing to keep in mind. Obviously, Slater, for me, a favourite going into any series he competes in next year, but judging from this, Nakamura-Berta will definitely be there, giving him a run for his money. Now, staying with Prema, they had a new face debuting last round, and I didn't get to talk about it, although I am very excited about him, which is who is Tomas Stoltemanis, the Latvian racing driver. Was in contention for one of those Ferrari Academy seats, but didn't quite get it for some reason. For me, easily one of the most exciting prospects graduating this year, and I am looking forward to what he can do, although it has to be said he started a little slow, especially last round. He didn't do anything because, you know, the quali session is early on, and if you don't do well in that, then yeah, have fun for the rest of the weekend. So that didn't quite go according to plan. This week was a lot better though, where he actually managed to start on the front row in the reverse grid race after doing pretty well in the first race, and thus actually scored his first podium by bringing home P2 in the reverse grid race. So yeah, just a nice little feel-good story. Not a lot to talk about, obviously. It's only been 2 rounds for him, but his development will certainly be interesting going forward. Last but not least, just one shout out, and that's Caranta. I just have to bring him up once again. We've talked about it throughout the weeks. He has been easily the most, I don't really want to say rookie because I don't know who counts as an official rookie, but as in maybe people who weren't talking about before the season, let's just frame it this way. He was consistently there, he was consistently improving as well. It wasn't just he hit the ground running and then stagnated, but he was also getting better and better, and I'm sure had the season gone on a few more rounds, he would have found himself on the podium at some point in one of the non-reverse grid races even maybe. So yeah, definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Now, in theory, there would be a lot more possible things to talk about for this series, so my proposition would be to make a proper, thorough review video for this, and maybe also for the Formula Regional Middle East, during next week, because there won't be any feeder series racing on, as you may or may not know. So please let me know down in the comments if you would be interested in watching such a video, and also make sure you're subscribed so you won't miss it if I actually end up making it. The Formula Regional Middle East probably produced our most impressive champion out of the 3, or I say probably, it's not even close in my opinion really. Tuukka Taponen has been absolutely stunning. He's hit the ground running in a car notoriously a bit tricky for rookies, and he's won this season while competing against the likes of Taylor Barnard. Yes, in inferior machinery, but still he had to beat some proper strong opposition to take this title. Now, on the broadcast, we have repeatedly heard comparisons between Tuukka Taponen and last year's Formula Regional Middle Eastern champion Andrea Kimi Antonelli, and it does make sense, obviously. I do know where Jake is coming from there, and just to take this out of the way first. No complaints with the commentary whatsoever. There have been some weird Twitter posts about people complaining that his commentary is too emotional. I don't like, if you don't like to watch exciting sports, then I mean, just don't. You're not forced to, but don't complain about the commentator for trying to do his job. That was really bizarre. Nonetheless, that's besides the point. So yeah, no personal attack here or anything, obviously. I'm just saying I find the comparison with Antonelli, it's not necessarily wrong, it's just very early, because essentially the phrase that kept getting repeated is, oh yeah, we're talking about Antonelli as an F1 contender now, so logically we should be doing the same about Taponen next year at the latest, and that could have been a bit tongue-in-cheek anyway. But yeah, there's no real reason to say this, in my opinion, just because out of Kimi's entire CV, including the karting and everything, this Formula Regional Middle Eastern season and also the FREC was maybe the least impressive thing he's done. Similar to this year, all the main competitors left before the end of the season anyway. And essentially Kimi more or less just had to beat Taylor Barnett back then before he had his F3 campaign, so he was just very also a rookie in probably a better car. That's one of the caveats I do want to throw in. I do believe Kimi had worse machinery to work with in both the Middle East and his summer campaign, whereas Tuukka now sits in the comfortably best car with the Race GP. Once again though, the key bit here is Kimi had like years and years before this that built him up already to be this F1 prospect, and then essentially his FREC performance and Formula Region Middle Eastern performance just kept confirming what we already knew. For Taponen, yes, we also know he is incredibly talented, but the way his F4 campaign has gone last year, at least meant there is clearly still some work to do. It's not quite the like almost complete product that Kimi looks like at times. Now, I'm not saying Taponen can't get there. I'm not saying he won't be in the F1 discussion. Well, I'm pretty sure he won't be in the F1 discussion next year. I am actually confident in saying this. But nonetheless, I do actually have him down as one of my F1 prospects in the coming years. I just think it is very early for those Kimi comparisons, and quite frankly, winning one title, no matter how dominant and impressive, just can't match winning every single title you've ever attempted to win in car racing, pretty much. So yeah, make of that what you want, really. Now, obviously there have been loads and loads and loads of other possible talking points in this series. As I said, might do a separate video about it. I just want to give one quick shout out to Kanata Lee, who also debuted at the end of the season in, yes, the very strong Race GP machinery, but he had a very good debut. He adjusted to the car quite well, and honestly, yeah, he more or less hit the ground running in a series of people already like all race warm in the car and on the tracks and everything. So just a quick little shout out. I think he did quite well. Let's move on to the last title secured. Now, the Formula Region Oceania Championship, much like its Middle Eastern counterpart, was more or less already decided before the last weekend, with Roman Bielinski dominating the series. Quite remarkably so, he actually hasn't won a race this time out. He's only secured a, well, not even, he was in contention for a couple second places and then didn't even end up getting one, if I remember correctly. It was in fact Liam Skeets winning both race 1 and race 3, with returning Kiwi Callum Edge securing the second places in both of these races. Now, if you don't know Callum Edge, he was probably the best driver on the grid, but unfortunately he was stuck in driving an M-Tech versus the M2 Army that was dominating the entire season. So I think he about did what he could in the New Zealand GP. Nonetheless, this entire series has obviously been all about the Bielinski show, and honestly, he keeps performing. Apparently, he's made some mistakes in quali this time around. That's why he wasn't quite in win contention. I don't watch quali for every single series, because who's got the time? So fair enough, I have to take this information. I thought he did quite well in the races. He keeps proving that he is one of the few drivers that can actually reliably make progress in these cars on track. Like, he can actually pull off passes very reliably. Yes, he missed an opportunity in, well, I guess by that logic should have been race 2, taking P2 from Woodstoff. He didn't quite manage to do, but nonetheless, this, like, the ability to overtake is something that I do value quite a bit, especially if it's as tricky as it is in these cars and on these tracks specifically. Now, The other guy, and I know I do bringing him up every week, but he'll be very relevant going forward this year, is Patrick Woodstoff, the American guy, the one who'll be probably the favorite in the Formula Regional Americas this year. And once again, this kid keeps delivering. Keep an eye out for him. He's been good throughout the entire season. He has like steadily progressed to a point where he's now a proper podium contender, even in non-reverse grid races. And honestly, it's just been a joy to watch throughout. Now, last but not least, unfortunately, the season ended on a bit of a weird note with a very rough crash. Now, I don't know if I can show this here because New Zealand Sky is a bit protective of their copyright, but I'll try to show you this here, which is essentially Bryce Aaron hitting the wall coming out of the last corner of the New Zealand GP. So going on to the start-finish straight. And he hit the wall, and Bielinski behind him had nowhere to go and ran into him from behind. A huge crash on the last lap. They both did get to keep their position, or I think it counted as an overtake for Bielinski or something. There was something weird. Doesn't matter for the championship, obviously. But yeah, so obviously these are the kinds of scenes I would very much prefer not to see, especially if it's a bunch of 16-year-olds racing each other. Now, 3 new champions. Now it's your time. Let me know which one impressed you the most and why is it Tuukka Taponen? These are 2 very important questions, I find. Otherwise, as always, thank you all for watching. I would very much appreciate if you could leave a like to help the channel a little bit, and I'll see you all next week.